Namaskar and welcome back to a fresh episode of Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. Sporadic showers and a strong breeze made the scorching summer a tad bearable this week, but the media headlines were hot right from London to Tokyo to the national capital. So let's catch up what made news. Prime Minister Narendra Modi once again drew attention to the dangers of dynasty politics and how family-run parties pose a danger to our democracy. He underscored that such parties were always focused on their own interests and failed to work for the poor. Their politics was always on how to stay in power. PM Modi was addressing a huge gathering in Telangana during his brief but significant visit to Hyderabad and Chennai. The much-awaited Quad Summit in Tokyo has ended with the promise of free access in the Indo-Pacific and long-term cooperation among member countries in multiple sectors, especially climate change, maritime, green energy, etc. India also joined the all-important Indo-Pacific Economic Framework in Tokyo. Meanwhile, PM Modi received fulsome praise for his handling of the COVID pandemic and showing the world that democracies can deliver. Convicted terrorist Yasin Malik was awarded 2 life terms by the NIA court earlier this week. The JKLF chief had been convicted by the court for various charges related to terror funding. The 2 sentences would run concurrently and Malik would be jailed till his last breath. Meanwhile, the Gupkar Alliance criticized the sentence, saying it could further alienate Kashmiris. India is not a nation but a union of states. BJP has spread kerosene in the country and the Indian situation is akin to Ukraine. These and other remarks by Rahul Gandhi in a London campus have created a huge controversy in India and among Indians living worldwide. While BJP slammed the comments as Rahul's anti-India tirade, social media users widely shared the interjection from the audience confronting the Congress leader. We'll have more on that in just a few moments. Government of India moved fast and announced a slew of measures this week aimed at curbing the rising trend of oil prices and other essentials. While the biggest cut was in petrol and diesel prices, that is more than 8 and 6 rupees respectively, customs duty has been cut on some important raw materials and export duty raised for some others. So viewers, among those headlines which you saw panning the media space through the week, you must have noticed, as we did, the controversies related to Congress leader Mr. Rahul Gandhi's statements given during events at the Cambridge University campus in London in the past few days. No doubt, they created a lot of furor, a lot of reaction was generated on social media platforms and in general debates, and you must have followed, as we did, how people gave some very sharp reactions against some of the statements of the Congress leader. Among the other things which he said at the Cambridge University and related events, the most reported was his statement that India is not a nation but a union of states, something on the lines of the European Union. At the same time, he slammed the central government and blamed the ruling party, the BJP, for creating a situation that was akin to spreading or sprinkling kerosene all over the country, which just needed a spark and the country would go up in flames. He also likened the situation on our eastern borders along the LAC vis-a-vis China to be the same as the situation in war-torn Ukraine. Needless to say, these statements of the Congress leader were debated ad nauseum across media platforms through the week and continue to be debated. So, the questions that have come out of the debates that we followed are, mostly, Is it right for a politician of a national stature to go on foreign soil and discuss whether India is a nation or not? Is it right to grind his political agenda across the globe at a time when the world is looking upon India to lead them in such difficult times? At the same time, there are supporters of Mr. Gandhi who say that the points raised by the Congress leader are not only valid but very relevant, and he has raised what nobody else dares to do. So where lies the truth, and what do our experts feel on these debates generated by Mr. Rahul Gandhi's statements? To discuss all that, let me introduce you straight away to my special guests for the evening. I have here with me Professor Geeta Bhatt, academic, well-known commentator. You have been watching her across media platforms and reading her in various publications. Welcome back to Media Scan, Professor Geeta Bhatt, and I hope you will be able to help us understand this very sensitive issue better than anybody else.
Well, Smita ji, thank you for calling me on your program.
My second guest for the evening, another frequent guest on our show and well-known political analyst, a Congress watcher, someone who has a great insight into the politics of UPA, its allies, and particularly the Congress party. Daniel Francis, welcome back to Media Scan.
Thank you, ma'am.
So coming to you, Professor Geeta Bhatt, to be fair to Mr. Rahul Gandhi, his supporters have been raising the argument, and they say that if India thinks it can lead the world, if we are an upcoming global power, and we like to discuss the goings-on happening all over the globe, what is wrong with a senior politician going to campuses, think tanks, and other platforms abroad and discussing the situation in the country? Because after all, you as an academician understand the value of debating and raising issues across all viewpoints more than anybody else. How do you look at it?
Smita ji, first of all, thank you for calling me on your program. And well, the question that you have raised is definitely relevant. You see, in every healthy democracy and a functional democracy, it is expected that the opposition parties, they and their leaders, they must contribute, you know, in terms of giving their constructive interventions in government policies or whatever decisions the government is taking, government of the day is taking. However, at the same time, it is also important that for the politicians of the opposition parties, that their own political, you know, interests, or rather, if I may say, vested interests, they should not overtake over the national interest, especially when they are in a foreign land.
Okay.
Now, you see, when Mr. Rahul Gandhi in particular, and this is not the first time, he has been abroad a couple of times before, where he has raised the kind of controversies which have been, which have been the highlight of discussion in various forums and on various media panels. And especially his comment, which was regarding that India is a union of states, was something which actually, you know, a politician who has been the president, vice president of the oldest political party of the country, it is expected that even if there is a disagreement over certain issues, it needs to be presented in a very, very mature and a validating way. Now, when you are saying that India is a union of states, you are completely disregarding what we understand as that this nation, it is not something which has been, you know, like in most of the in Europe, where after the Second World War, you know, a lot of new nations came up, or after the disintegration of USSR, we saw that there were different nations that sprung up across Europe. India it is a civilizational country. We are a nation which has got civilizational roots.
By the way, Professor Bhatt, during the discussion, a scholar in the audience, in fact, pointed out to Mr. Gandhi that the concept of nation was around right at the times of Acharya Chanakya, and perhaps even before that. That means for more than 1,000 centuries. To which Mr. Rahul Gandhi argued that nation is a Western concept and Rashtra, as was mentioned by Acharya Chanakya or other stalwarts, actually meant kingdom. How do you read that reaction?
Well, I think when you say Rashtra in Sanskrit connotation, it actually, if you try to find a similar word in English, then we try to say it in terms of nation.
Yes.
But when we are saying Rashtra, we are talking about about people, about geography, which are united. Unlike that, in terms of what Mr. Rahul Gandhi had said is something which actually finds lot of similarity in what the left ideology, the communists have been saying for a very long time. People like Mr. Gangadhar Adhikari, who were part of the Communist Party of India, and their known ideologues like Mr. Joshi in 1942-43.
Right.
Gangadhar Adhikari, a report came where he tried to justify and he called that India, it is basically India is a geographical nation. That it does
So
not
are
have,
you saying,
there are
Professor
different
Bhatt,
nationalities in it. So
Rahul Gandhi's political
Mr. Rahul
argument
Gandhi,
appears to be closer to the left parties or the left front in the country rather than his own party. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, it has been. There has been an ideological vacuum in the Congress party for a very long time, and time and again we have seen that the statements that have been coming from their leaders, they are voiced in exactly the same phrases which we find is present in the archives or in the ideological sayings of the leftists and the communists in the country.
Okay,
And
so on that,
exactly
let me
and
bring in
also,
Daniel Francis.
If I can just add
okay,
a small
okay,
point.
okay. Please make your point.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add that while he has been very bitterly criticizing, because saying that dousing with kerosene, the political party which is in the present dispensation is dousing the country with with petrol and putting it in fire. It's a very venomous comment. I mean, this is something. It is in a way you are casting aspersions on the electoral process of the country, and also you are rejecting the voice of the people.
I'll come to the electoral prospects of his statement also, Professor Bhatt. But if I can just bring in Daniel Francis here.
Sure.
Daniel, you heard the good professor tell us how Rahul Gandhi's political thoughts and ideas are, they appear more and more closer to the left front nowadays rather than, the stalwarts in his own party, that is the Congress. Now, coming to realpolitik, Daniel Francis, it's good to have an academic discussion, but let us not forget that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is a hardcore politician. He has to win elections for his party if he wants his party to be revived, as is being claimed. When he goes out on foreign soil, in foreign campuses or think tanks and other events, and gives out statements like this which generate such sharp reaction closer home, in realpolitik terms, do you think it actually helps him get, it brings any electoral benefits for the party? Because at the end of the day, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has to win elections in India if he wants to challenge the Modi regime, which he criticizes so bitterly.
Well, he has the right to criticize his opponent, whether it is in India or and he's obsessed by that idea. And we are a democratic country, so we can always accept that and allow him to do so. That's fair enough. But when I hear statements like India is not a nation, it's a union of states, and so on and so forth, I feel very concerned. One is the concern that I have for him personally, that how is a person who's having come from such a strong legacy have such a sketchy idea of the Indian nation state. And second thing is that the political reactions to it in India amongst the masses, when masses hear this kind of narrative that is spun to them, that we are a union of states and challenging the idea of the Indian nationhood, either he is just not bothered about how it affects him, or he doesn't understand the impact of this on his prospects or the party's prospects.
Right.
There is,
so aren't there people in the party who have a better sense of India's, grassroots politics, who would like to tell him that what he speaks or he tries to reiterate is not going down well with the Indian masses?
I was looking for some people in the Congress party. If you really look at the speech of Pranab Mukherjee given at the RSS headquarters in Nagpur, it's a very interesting point he makes of the idea of the India as a nation state,
right,
and why it is important to strengthen it and protect it. I think the Congress is not left with people either who have the courage to defend this idea which was given to them by their forefathers in the pursuit of being relevant today, but they have no idea that such positions are going to make them irrelevant for the future. And I was really hoping that this could be termed as a slip of tongue or misinterpreted statement, and somebody comes and apologizes or corrects this on his behalf, or he himself does that. But I saw no such move from the part of the Congress party or Rahul Gandhi himself, and it's a concerning position. If a principal opposition party leader has a position, very important political position, saying that India is not a nation, it's a very critical position, and a position that can, damage the idea of India as a nation in the future.
In fact, Daniel Francis, I was going through the reactions which people have been, very vocal to come out with. And a lot of people, and you cannot associate them with, a political party, or they are not party functionaries.
Correct.
Common people have been sort of labeling Mr. Rahul Gandhi's statements as anti-India even.
No, it in a way, see, these are perspectives. One can strongly react to it as anti-India statements because in India, a nation is an imagined idea based on sovereignty and integrity of the territorial land and shared values.
Perfect.
We may not be very close to each other in everything that we do. Our languages will be different, the way we eat, the way we work, and the way what things we wear. But there's a lot of common things, there are a lot of common languages. There's a lot of common commonality in terms of religion, shared values, Indian value system, and the whole idea of Indian nation state. That is what has kept together even when we formed linguistic states, which Nehru, his great grandfather, was opposed to. Initially,
absolutely, Daniel,
and he was
our
opposed
constitution
to it only.
makers, if I may add, our constitution makers always believed that these diversities that you have articulated actually strengthened our position, rather than make us a union of states in the form that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is trying to propound. But let me just bring in Professor Geeta Bhatt here and see what she would like to tell us. She, being an academic, will have a wider perspective of the issue. Professor Bhatt, I shall come to you on this, and I just wanted to move on from this from this issue of the London program, the Cambridge University event, to certain events on previous occasions. And apart from what Mr. Gandhi said in London this time, I remember one of his statements while hitting out at the Prime Minister. He had said, even Saddam, Gaddafi, and then he went on to say, trying to, imply that the Prime Minister's position was worse than these leaders that he had mentioned, because he said that Mr. Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, etc., had also won elections in their time. At another time, he was angry why the USA was silent about what's going on in India. Again, on another occasion, he was trying to say that the DNA of tolerance that was a part of Indian society is now perhaps finished. Then there are other occasions, for example, his address to students during in a university campus in Singapore, where he talked about the increasing polarization in the society, etc. And he told in one of the question answer sessions, when somebody asked him a question, you wouldn't dare to do this to PM Modi. The long and short of the issue here is, Professor Bhatt, that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is being pointed out as a habitual offender, and some even say that he particularly takes these events as participation so that he can run down the country. Do you think that's a bit of a harsh statement, or is it really true that there are powers at play at the global level who deliberately like to invite Mr. Gandhi on their platforms so that he can run down India for which perhaps suits his agenda and other people's agenda as well?
Well, Smitaji, definitely there is an ecosystem which time and again tries to hurt the position and the respect of the Prime Minister of the country, and also by doing so also hurt the position of the country. Now, you are right that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is a habitual offender, if we may say so. And considering that he is...
I was only articulating some of the reactions, yes, Professor Bhatt.
Yeah, you see, he's not a baby that he can be, he can walk into someone's trap and someone can put words into his mouth. It is something which, and there are many of such events, they're actually organized, in an indirect way, in a tacit way by the party itself, or those who are the supporters of the party in the foreign lands. Now, going out and asking other countries, for example, you just mentioned that in one of the programs, which I think was with Harvard or some other university, he was asking that why United States of America is not interfering, and asking them in a way to interfere in the domestic politics of the country. So, you see, these kind of comments, they are reflecting upon the kind of maturity that a politician has. And this, in a way, I mean, I'm sure there must be many well-wishers of Mr. Gandhi who can tell him that there is something that he needs to change in terms of he needs to be seen standing with the country and not, opposed to the country. And that is what I was trying to tell you earlier, that, trying to, for example, damage the reputation of the Prime Minister, someone who has been for a couple of years been one of the most popular leaders worldwide, not only in just the country, but worldwide. So this is not going to help. You see, you have...
Okay, so you are saying that in pure political terms of also, if we were to talk about it, forgetting the larger debate, it's not going to help Mr. Gandhi. So I'll just get a quick reaction from Daniel Francis on this, Professor Bhatt, because I am afraid we are just about to run out of time. Daniel Francis, Professor Bhatt just mentioned about, well-meaning leaders in his party, and there must be a lot of well-wishers Mr. Gandhi has. On that point, we have just seen what happened in the Chintan Shivir of the Congress party, and subsequently the way senior leaders have been leaving the party, deserting it one after another. On that, at this point, at this juncture, what do you think statesmen like these give out the message to people within the Congress party who would like to see a political future for themselves in the grand old party? And also, what kind of message does it give to various parties in the non-BJP, non-NDA bloc who would like to align with the Congress in the coming days, particularly with an eye on 2024?
I think the concern within the Congress and within the allies is very simple, that the leadership of Mr. Rahul Gandhi as a leader, or as one of the important leader of the UPA or the alliance that is opposing the NDA, is questioned, and his credibility, his understanding, his strength to take them together as a national party stands absolutely in doubt. It doesn't instill any confidence in them that that he can steer a major boat or a major ship like the Congress in the direction that it should take. And while on the other hand, the BJP and under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi is consolidating its position both ideologically, socially and politically across India. And I think they also believe that Mr. Modi's election victories are no sanction or are no remark on his approval. And I think they're absolutely wrong in that. There is a reason why people are voting for him. And unless and until these people truly understand what these reasons are, for them to imagine themselves in the position of governance in India nationally is a far-fetched dream from now.
Very well put, Daniel. Very well put. And I think if you may quickly finish your point, yes.
Yeah, only problem is that Congress is not left with either the young or the old with spine and courage to stand up for the idea of India which they themselves imagine or which they themselves defend.
Point
so these contradictions are
right.
leaving people of India in a perplexed position.
Right. Viewers, as Daniel Francis just put it, and earlier Professor Bhatt was also articulating her point, it's a sign of healthy democracy if people have to raise issues and questions against the government of the day and also other issues of concern. However, it does cause a lot of concern if any senior politician is found to be raising issues against the country, particularly on the social fabric of the country, again and again, particularly on foreign soil, because it gives an opportunity to lot of powers who are lurking and who would like India not to succeed in the coming days, because India stands out as one of those countries which has weathered the toughest storms in the past few years with great confidence. On that note, I want to say thank you to Professor Geeta Bhatt, who had to do a lot of rescheduling to join Media Scan this evening. Thank you very much, Professor Bhatt, for finding the time.
Thank you.
Also, Daniel Francis, always a pleasure to speak to you, because you have always been known to say it as it is. Thanks again. Viewers, with that lively conversation, it's a wrap up on Media Scan for this evening. But do keep watching DD India, as we shall continue to scan the media for you. Namaskar.